What was that one video? Has a guy that looks just like me right now with the earphones on. Mama,
the Yuma dance.
Whatever it was.
The Yuma dance. Maya he, Maya who, Maya ha, Maya ha ha.
Like father,
like son.
just two regular guys that love to distro hop.
Not too technical or even bleeding edge.
But functional and necessary for getting things done.
In Linux and open source.
Join us as we learn together on the Father
and Son podcast.
All right, welcome to Season 1, Episode 7 of Like Father, Like Son Linux Review Podcast. I am Like Father.
And I am Like Son.
And hopefully, we got our audio working better now. So if we don't, you're not going to hear me talking about it right now because I wouldn't include it.
But if we did, you guys are in for a little treat.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping, we know our audio was kind of messing with us a lot. And we've been trying to make it better, but we still have limited funds to do that with. I mean,
right.
We both have different jobs that we have to do, but families to take care of. And, this is a hobby, if you will. We're not trying to make money off of it or anything like that. We're just trying to enjoy talking about Linux because we like Linux. And our wives and kids are probably tired of us talking about it. Now, of course, we hope we get to pour into the next generation for Linux, and that's going to be with our kids and stuff. But anyway, we get a chance to talk to you about it. So that's what we're doing today. So with that all said...
Speaking of transferring it back to the next generation,
yeah,
my daughter was actually asking what Linux was the other day.
Nice.
And got to explain it to her, and I was like, the best way I can explain it to you right this moment is your most recent... experience with it is Android, your phone.
Kind of, yeah.
At the very core, it is Linux. It's of course reformatted for mobile devices and rebranded as its own thing, Android in this case. But still, at the very core, it runs Linux or kernels and terminal and everything else.
Correct me if I'm wrong, on the distro watch, sometimes they have like Android stuff on there, kind of? I mean, you have Unix, you have Raspberry Pi stuff. Mm-hmm. I think anything that falls under open source will be on there as well.
They have the Android open source project, that's AOSP.
Right.
They also have, there's Bliss OS. That's a Android operating system that they're trying to kind of cater towards tablets as well as computers, kind of do everything with Android. Then you have Fide OS. It's a little bit different. It's running kind of Chromium or Chrome OS. And then on the backside, it also includes the ability to play or run with Android APK files. And there's a plethora of others, but those are the ones that I can think of right off the top of my head.
Well, they only have 100 slots there. Of course, you can go to the search on distrowatch.com, and you go to the search, and you can do different things. You can do like the forks of it, like if it's based on something, you can do it that way.
Yep.
Or you can do a search on just the name. Or you can just do a regular search out there on, whatever search browser browser search you use.
Correct.
And you could probably go out there and find it. And then I guess something that we never really talked about too much was SourceForge, which actually has a lot of the stuff where you download is on SourceForge. So
it is.
I remember like when we were doing Bros or Bromium OS, which is really Brazilian OS, but BROS. I got that off of SourceForge because their website was down. I don't know how I did that. I guess I just did a search, downloaded, start working on it. by the way, with caution, don't do that.
Don't just install something that you're not 100% on.
Right. And I wasn't too worried about, because I'm going to be putting it onto a blank hard drive separate from everything. So, I mean,
you probably weren't accessing big files that you weren't too worried about.
Nothing super secret or anything like that. You know?
So it's always good to be a little cautious. It never hurts.
Absolutely.
So speaking of some of the being cautious, so we'll get to maintaining your computer a little bit later in this particular episode. But first, what have you been doing this week with IT?
Well, here lately, I think that's going to fall, it's Linux, open source, or general IT. And I think this one's going to fall under open source. I do have Linux stuff on it. It just so happened that our children's department, they're over at the church, they're putting together a Mother's Day project, if you will. And what they're going to do is record stuff on a phone and then try to put it together as a little video before church started to celebrate Mother's Day. And I said, we could do something better than that. So I grabbed the laptop and our microphone and our little podcast cameras and stuff that we had back during the COVID days there at the church, and took it down there. And of course, on my laptop, I had Debian on there.
Right.
And I used OBS, Audacity, just kind of like we're doing right now.
Right.
And I started recording it that way. And then I took it and worked with Audacity, because children, they're not into this recording thing. You're either going to have the one that thinks they're like the greatest thing on earth, and they're going to grab the mic and, I'm Elvis has left the building, and they just, but anyway, they'll be excited about it. Or you have yes. So you got to work with the shy and the bold, and so the only way to really level that out was with Audacity, so I cleaned it up a lot better. And then of course Caden Live, I use that. Krita for some of the graphics.
Yep.
Probably the only thing and I'm not sure if they're open source or not. I don't think they are necessarily. It was Canva, which is you can do free Canva stuff on the browser. And I think they got some desktop apps for that too as well. But most of the time I'm using Krita, and I put all that together to make this video. So I had to take like what was probably 30 or 40 minutes worth of stuff and break it down after cleaning it up to 7 minutes.
Right. Which it's a lot of work, but you can do it.
A few hours. But it was all done by open source. Now, with that said, I don't have Debian on that laptop anymore, so we'll talk about that later on. But I went to another Linux after that, so we had to change it up just a hair bit.
Well, I actually also changed to a different Linux, but more on that later on. Yeah, in a minute.
So what have you been doing in open source, general IT, or Linux this week?
So this is going to fall right under general IT. Okay, I was just mentioning that we're going to talk about maintaining your computer a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was doing something similar. I have an ADD, and whenever I'm working, my desk needs to be, I won't say immaculate, but it has to be fairly clean, especially in my field of vision. Otherwise, it's going to be distracting. I'm not going to be able to work.
I don't think that's ADD. I think that's OCD.
It's a little bit of both. A little bit of both. Because my ADD talks and says, oh, something else you want to be distracted by? Absolutely.
Right.
OCD is like, let me clean that. So when it comes to my keyboard, if I happen to notice that it's super oily or, got little stuff on it or something like that, I'm sitting there distracted, not being able to focus or, before I clean it. So I was on lunch when I decided I'm going to go ahead and clean my keycaps because I noticed that they were dirty. It's like, it's at lunch. I should have more than enough time. I was going to use the 90% rubbing alcohol, which is what I usually use. However, couldn't find any.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I was like, okay, no biggie. Let's use boiling water.
Yeah.
Oh, this is genius. This is great. It's going to save a lot of time. It's going to be hot. You're going to take it out. It's going to dry off real quick. And 5 minutes later, I come back and look at my keys, and my spacebar is now a C. A little C here.
Wait, not the ergonomically helpful thing to catch your thumb right. Why won't this fit back on my keyboard? I can't get it to fit. What's going on?
So, in a frantic effort, because I was timing this, I should have had just enough time to get it all put back together and sign back into work. 15 minutes on the clock, I realized, oh great, now I need to get a new keyboard. So I run to Walmart, I go grab just any keyboard, get back. I have to unroute the one cable, which I had just managed. I had just managed my cables. It was nice. They're nice and bundled up. The problem is that they're nice and bundled up.
Right.
So you have to unplug it and everything. Anyway, needless to say, do not boil your keycaps. If they've got small plastic,
they're just a little bit too hot.
Yeah, it's a little too hot. You can use warm water. That's not a big issue. But I always suggest anything related to IT or electronics, use rubbing alcohol. It's a much safer bet. It's going to evaporate, and usually evaporates cleanly.
Anyway,
the other side of that is that is not ionized.
So I understood the other half of that was because, hey, Dad, do you have an extra keyboard?
Yeah, that was later on the very next day, whenever I actually had some time. I called my dad on probably my lunch and was like, can I steal another one of your keyboards? He's like, yeah, I've got 12. Come grab one, please.
Yeah, so we have a few extra ones here and there.
So, needless to say, I'm working on ordering some new keycaps. I'm going to try to get a custom-made Windows key that you see most of your guys' keyboards, but I don't want it to be Windows. I want it to be a Linux, like Tux or something like that. So that would be kind of fun. So I go into Linux and open source side of things. I actually reinstalled a new operating system. I've told you guys that I have moved my home folder to a home drive. A completely separate drive from my system.
Correct, yeah.
And
so what he means, he has a different partition for the home drive.
I have a whole drive.
A different drive separate. Okay. Yeah. So you could do either one.
Correct.
Most of the time when you're setting up your operating system with Linux nowadays, they do have all those /home /whatever. And I guess it adjusts to what's needed the most. But
Correct.
This is actually giving it its own device separately.
Correct.
And that takes a little bit more working on it type thing. Sometimes you could do it. Well, if you're doing it on a separate drive, you're going to have to do it after the fact. There's no. You did it while you're doing this installation?
Yes. This time around.
Nice.
Yeah. So normally I do it after the fact. Okay, I go and install it. It's like, all right, go in, get my first update, just because don't want to mess with any security things, and then move it over. Just go ahead and copy all the home folder stuff over, and then set the fstab file. This is the file that tells the computer what drives to mount where and when. That's just at boot usually whenever you're editing your fstab file. That's for y'all who aren't too familiar with that. Anyway, this time around, I decided to go ahead and let me manually partition it at the beginning and see if I can get it to work. Well, 4 times later, I did.
So it took a little while.
It took me a minute. It took me a minute to figure out that I wasn't giving enough space for the boot file. In particular, the boot EFI. So you had the boot partition that needed at least a gig, and then I needed at least another 500 to 600 megabytes for the EFI partition.
Right.
And they are actually formatted differently.
Right. And they have the different, one of them I think you leave unformatted, and the other one you have to format with a FAT32, I believe.
Yes.
Yes. And I think I've ran into a problem before when it's trying to update the boot file or the other file, one of the two, and it didn't have enough space. So it wouldn't update it. And I couldn't give it more space using Partition Manager or anything like that, which is a little bit more advanced. But you can use gparted or KDE parted or disks or something like that to adjust that. make sure you know what you're doing before you do that. So those things.
And I urge you, if you are going to do that, do it from a separate live thing. Don't try to do it while you're actively working.
I don't think he'll let you do it while you're actively working on it. I think
you can.
Now, see, I can do it from a separate non-live one, if you will, because I have my different partitions different drives doing different Linuxes. So you can do that. But yeah, and also, honestly, me and Jamie probably have messed it up multiple times.
What are you talking about?
And learned our lessons. I have found myself doing a lot more stuff with Clonezilla, and I seem to have this system going right now, okay? So the system is this. If I start liking the Linux a lot, it moves up to a little bit bigger drive, okay? Because somewhere around the 500 gigabyte, maybe just a little bit under that is where all my files are when I get everything working that I like to work with, right? Mm-hmm. That includes bringing my music across and everything like that, right? So I start off on that 240 or 256, and then if I really start liking that distro, it moves up to the 500. If I really like that distro, or 512, if I really like that one, it moves up to the 1 terabyte, So if you guys want to know which ones I have on 1 terabyte right now, that's going to be the Arch, just your vanilla general Arch.
Okay.
NixOS.
Nice.
It's actually 1 terabyte as well. And I'm trying to think what the other one was now. But things like 512, I do have OpenSUSE on 512 right now. This one right here, which we're going to be talking about today, Voyager, I still have that on the 240. Yeah. But when you start doing that, you got to make sure you're doing it to the right one.
Oh, no.
Sometimes I know it's the right one by the size, because sometimes they're not the exact same size.
Right.
They'll say 256 or 240, and they might actually be 229. Or you get that a lot more with your little thumb drives. And they're selling it as, this is a 64 gigabyte thumb drive, but actually you have 59 gigabytes.
Yeah. I have an NVMe 128 gigabyte. It actually, according to Linux, it goes to, I think, 126.
So I do have a Windows drive. It's on 240.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Windows and Linux occasionally say different things. It's kind of funny when you go look at it.
The other one that's on a 1 terabyte is Void OS.
Still like it?
I like Void. I haven't put it in a while, but I just like the idea of its own thing.
Yeah.
That was actually pretty cool. And I still like Void, and we may go back and look at that later on. Anything else you have in the IT general?
No, that was a fun little excursion.
All right.
So
it's been about a month since we did our last recording. Usually we're doing about every 2 weeks.
We try.
And a lot of things changed, but we did take a trip in between. So we did go to Texas Linuxfest. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, here we go. We got our Texas Linuxfest. So we traveled to Austin to go to Texas Linuxfest, hang out with a bunch of nerds, which is, a lot of this stuff was probably over my head, probably not over your head. I mean,
some of it was also over my head.
There's a lot of, they did have a lot of security stuff going on there too. So they kind of combined two different festivals together, and the security stuff was all there, and that was kind of cool. We did see a lot of stuff with Red Hat Linux, or Red Hat Enterprise Linux RHEL, and of course that means also Fedora was there as well, and I guess Alma was there as well for that.
And Rocky Linux.
So there's some of that. We did have some people doing Python that was there.
Oh yeah,
Bash was some of the stuff they did there. I can't remember everything that's there. We got to meet kind of a guy that was kind of cool. He kind of does some stuff for IT for, I want to say it more like a school or
it's a nonprofit organization. And on his spare time, he puts together VIC-20s and own gaming systems and soldered them together. And using Linux, made his own game machine, so he can emulators, I guess, but he made this own little tabletop gaming, machine like your old Asteroids and Defender, and these were
games before most of you guys are born. So
no, I know exactly. So the arcade style, like you're actually going to the arcade, you put in the
complete with the buttons,
yeah,
and so pretty cool stuff. Anyway,
which means that he has to know a little bit about the electricity or
the electronics part of it,
circuit part of it, yeah. Which I have absolutely no idea about, but that's still super
he had
cool.
Painted monitor put in there, the lit all lit up on the top stuff, and just pretty cool. So, I mean, that's incredible you can do that. Hoping he'll write me back and send us some more pictures of that, because that was kind of cool. Maybe when we get some spare time one of these days, but it's like that Arch Linux that I've been testing out, but in giant size. So.
Okay, now, since you mentioned Arch Linux and the little thing that you've been testing out, go ahead and show them your new one.
Oh, that's in the other room.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So he has, okay, so Mom likes to, I don't want to say hog, but she likes to play Dr. Mario quite frequently.
Hours at a time.
And unfortunately, that Dad only had the one little device, which, by the way, I got to test on the trip up. It was fun. Really kind of cool. Took me back, especially with some of the other emulators that I had played.
Well, you have some stuff that you played when you're in the backseat of the car before, when we were traveling as kids,
I remember that.
Pokemon Yellow and, Pokemon Blue and Pokemon,
Puzzle League. We even took the 64 one time.
So the 64 thing's kind of, we had the 64 connected to the screen on that when we had the SUVs.
Because they had the jacks. Cool. That was pretty fun.
That was neat.
But anyway, so he got Mom her own. So
right.
She has a white one, he has a black one, and now he can play all that he wants. And then he decided, hey, look, there's another one of the same price range.
Same price range.
Slightly better processor, and wider screen.
More RAM. Wider screen, but I wasn't going for the wider screen. I was going for a little bit wider body because I have fat hands. And the fat hands kind of get cramped if you're going to play anytime. And I'm not saying I'm playing hours at a time, but
yes, he is.
Yeah, the games I like to play are, I like Asteroids from way back when, and I do like playing. It was Contra. I love Contra.
Oh, Contra
and Life
was
Force,
fun.
The Konami stuff. So that was all fun.
I was terrible at Contra, but it was fun.
But it starts fading out a little bit, around the 64 stuff. It starts, you can start hearing the sound kind of, not quite as perfectly streaming type thing. But so anyway, but the Linuxfest was fun. Basically, this is Texas Linuxfest getting back started again after COVID. Apparently, it was pretty big before COVID. So you probably had maybe 30 booths there or something like that representing, and I can't remember how many different speakers they had upstairs, but it was good. It was fun. It's kind of neat to get around people that like to talk about Linux. So
we met somebody else that worked with Red Hat Enterprise Linux.
Yeah.
He was one of the IT fellows.
Several of those guys because they're probably manning the booth,
and we met a podcaster or a set of podcasters
right
over there too, and they were live podcasting.
Oh yeah, so we did get to see the Linux Unplugged guys.
Yeah,
so that's a good. If you haven't heard them before, they're a good podcast, and we'll give you a lot of information. And it's fun listening to them because they're ones that actually, have done all the networking and all that stuff in the real world and are doing the podcast too. And some of those guys, the stuff they do is like, you got to be kidding me. How could they do that? They even took, I want to say they had to take a 32-bit. That was one of their challenges to do a 32-bit. So they had to do 32-bit with Linux on it and use that as their working computer. And if they couldn't do that, then they had to go to BSD, and use BSD instead. And so it's interesting to hear them talk about that, but they're a good group of guys. So, I don't know if is that plug for them or not, but they are, it's a good Linux group to listen to because they seem to know their stuff quite well.
Yeah. We're not trying to send you guys away from our podcast at all.
Our little small podcast, but
if you, we're all about sharing, just like in the Linux community. Yeah, so if you want to go listen to a couple of other guys speaking about Linux from a different perspective, absolutely go check out Linux Unplugged. They're great guys.
Yeah.
Even meeting them was pretty fun.
Okay.
This episode, we decided we're not only going to review Voyager OS, but we're also going to go ahead and give you guys some tips on how to keep maintaining your computer.
So we want to keep things not always technical. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit technical, but some practical stuff that you can use. So this one's going to be one of the practical things you can use. And so we're thinking about, what can we do, or what kind of maintenance things should we do?
Right.
Once a month, if you will, to make sure our machines, which would be our computers, are working at top form if we can, So
right.
The first one is clean the files off your desktop. And I haven't done that yet this month.
I'm going to have to harp on this, okay? So there's not anything wrong with keeping a few files on your desktop to help you easily access them. If it's something you access frequently, keeping it on the desktop isn't necessarily a bad thing. What becomes a problem is if you only use the desktop to store all your files. I work with IT at Providence. Okay, I was in the call center. I had somebody call in and they said they had run out of space. I'm sitting here thinking they ran out of disk space.
No, they ran out of computer desktop space.
3 monitors worth of desktop wallpaper were completely covered with nothing but file icons, and they were asking for more space.
I used to be really good at keeping things out on the documents. And the reason why is because I was pretty sure, I think I learned this early on, that the more stuff you put on your desktop itself, actually it slows your computer down.
Because it's displaying it.
Yeah, compared to being in your documents. So, but nowadays I got so much in my documents that what I'm working on at that moment will be usually on the desktop, and then I'll move it to documents or wherever I'm actually, whatever folder I'm going to put it in beyond that. So it helps to speed up what you're doing because, and I have that at my work too. The IT stuff. I'll go over there and they have their shortcut to this and their shortcut to that and their shortcut to all these web pages and the shortcut to this and shortcut. If anything happens, because there's times that things will change. Like let's say you have to change internet companies. Usually that means they're going to bring in a different router. Not always, but yeah, different stuff. And all your IP addresses change.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And so all of a sudden your printer doesn't work and other things don't work, right? Well, all these things become broken, all these links and stuff, because it's not the same connections they had before.
Right.
And
but that could be of anything.
Correct.
If you had it just mapped as a network drive, it would be by IP. It would be the same thing.
Right. And you're trying to show them that, hey, this is where it's located over here. And yeah, if you mapped your drive, you could have problems like that too. And that's usually what you're doing is mapping your drive. Because if you're working with a NAS or something like that type system, you're going to have drives that you mapped. And yes, that could become broken sometime, So, but beyond that, it makes it where, when I go on their computers to do stuff, if I have to, I'm like, okay, where is what, because you're looking at about 40 icons right there on the desktop.
Yep, absolutely. So that please learn to use folders. It helps out too. You can, if you got a lot of shortcuts, group them all together, stick them in one folder, name that folder shortcuts, double click on it, you have all your shortcuts right there, and you have saved however many icons that you have a space on your your thing. So you don't necessarily need to delete it, just get it cleaner.
Correct. It's more like organizing at that point.
Yes, that's better.
But if you do need to delete it, number 2 we need to do is delete files that you don't need. So you get at the end of the month and you haven't used this file, or as a temporary file, you're doing this project for a short amount of time, you're never going to use it again, it's done. Boom, you can go ahead and delete that, throw that in the trash,
Yeah.
So
one of the bigger ones is usually your downloads folder.
That is a big. So the 2 places that you usually have a lot of stuff is the downloads, and then the other one would be like a temp folder. Sometimes there's temp stuff. And I want to say there are programs we may talk about in the distro that we're the Linux distro that we're reviewing today, but they do have cleanup things. They'll go through and grab all the stuff that you're not using. I know in Linux there is I guess a terminal command that you could put in there to clean up the orphans that you don't use.
Right. That's for Arch.
That's for Arch. Okay, so that's some of the stuff that can be removed. You can go through, and this is what I'm really bad at, is you go through all the stuff that you don't need, because what happens if you don't get rid of it at that time, later on you can't remember, is this important, not important, I don't know, I'm going to, and pretty soon you're carrying all this stuff around Nextcloud, you know, an extra 300 gigabytes of stuff that you probably never going to use again.
Right.
I'm not saying I do that. But,
not that he's worried about it either. No.
Well, and
presently.
So, clean that up before you forget.
Right.
Was this important or not important?
Part of cleaning your files is also deleting your browser history and cache. Yes. I know that sounds scary to some of you guys, where it's like, my bookmarks are going to be gone. That's not true.
No, your bookmarks stay there.
Yep.
Now, what might go, and it's a good thing,
is your saved passwords.
Your username and passwords will go.
Please. Okay, so I know passwords can be scary. And at some point in one of these podcasts, we will actually talk about password security, how to make a great password that's easy to remember and hard to guess.
Right.
But one of the easiest ways for people to get a hold of your passwords or your usernames is for you to save them anywhere on your device.
Right. Especially if you're doing Google, a lot of times people go out there and get their Gmail account and open that up and do it, and they'll forget to log out. The next person can come up there. You're right there. Your little icon's up in the upper right-hand corner. I see it all the time. Or if you save that password on that thing, that you can see sometimes you can see there's 3 or 4 different users there in all their Google accounts. So
correct.
You got to be careful with that for sure. But it's good to clean the cache because your browser will work faster.
Yep.
And you can put the username and things in later on again. The idea of the cache is to make things seem faster. So instead of having to load up the same repeated stuff each time,
right,
especially graphics, it has it there already. But it's good to clean them off every once in a while because it'll just be slow on that first time you're loading it the next time. But you won't have all the extra stuff that you just looked up one time. What is the carbs of pizza, or something like that. That will be gone, and you may not even look at that again. So it's true. You'll get rid of the stuff that you don't use.
Then you also run into sometimes the cache can get corrupted. That's not, sounds bad. It's not really usually a big issue. It just means you need to re-download that file in the easiest way, clear your cache, reload the page, fixed.
That's one of those things sometimes when you call in to get help from IT and something like that, they'll say, hey, we got to go to your browser and clean out your cache, because sometimes it is not updating to whatever you change because it has the old cache there. It keeps loading.
Correct.
So you think it's broken, and the deal is it's just because it can't load up the new stuff because it still thinks the old stuff is the correct stuff, and it's not.
Right.
So, good reason to get rid of that. What about removing any unused apps?
That's always a good thing. If you don't use something, or maybe you tried it and it wasn't for you, or maybe you did try it, you used it one time for, I remember what program did I use? Probably just once. And that was for something school related. I know it was. And then didn't need it again. It just stayed on there for a while. You really don't need it. Just go ahead and get rid of it. Another one is background applications.
Background apps?
Yeah. Some of the ones that run in the background.
Right.
That you may not need. So, thinking about some of those, go ahead and uninstall them too. This is usually a bigger one on your phone.
Correct. Yeah, so you have everything running in the background that you don't know. Now, you have that in your computer. Usually it's in the upper right or lower right, where it's showing you what applications are running. We used to do, like right click on the bar at the bottom on Windows so we can get to Task Manager, and the Task Manager could open up. You can see all that running. You can do that as well in Linux, but it's not right click on the browser. It depends on which operating system you have working, but you can see what's actually running.
Right.
And you can stop those. But, those can be on your startup apps as well. Startup applications or auto start applications, and you can go in there and cutting this out. It's not as big in the Linux stuff because they don't usually have a lot of stuff running in the background unless you tell it that you want it running in the background.
Very true.
Windows can have a lot of stuff running in the background. I'm not so sure about the Mac stuff, what they have running in the background, but yeah, especially if you start noticing your computer's getting slower.
Yeah,
that could be all the stuff's running in the background. And some of them, I don't understand why they have it running in the background. The only purpose of that is it's a bigger program, and they want it to look like it's opening up real fast.
Yeah.
And so they have it running in that tray the whole time just so it can open up real fast,
Yeah.
And, certain programs are big. You should just face it's going to take a while for that one to load. And when I say a while, we're talking seconds. Oh my gosh, we got to wait seconds instead of hundreds of seconds. What a world we live in that we get we are entitled to get our things in milliseconds. But yeah, that's another thing. Software updates for everything to run efficiently, for your security to stay secure.
Yeah,
it's good to do the updates now. On Arch and things like that, maybe you don't do them every day, every hour of every minute. Okay, I know people that do that, but
not me.
But if you're getting to the end of the month and you're not updating those particular ones, you probably need to.
Yes,
because you can get out there far enough, it may crash on you because it's got too far to go as far as the updates. Yep. And it might give you errors and so forth. But go ahead and get them updated as quickly as you can. Let's see. How about backing up your files?
Backing up the ones that you need.
Correct.
And we'll talk about good backup hygiene later on too, but not this episode.
I mean, if there's important stuff you can set it up to an automatic backup type stuff. But yeah, always, the important stuff you want to keep. That includes, if you have family pictures and stuff like that, go ahead and get those backed up because once you lose the digital part, if it's only been digital, that's it.
Yeah.
You won't find Aunt Penny's whatever thing here or Uncle George, So those are the things you probably need to back up. Again, just the important ones that you're going to need again.
So let's go ahead and go to the next tip 2 here, and that would be cleaning your hardware.
Yeah. I have a Dell, and this Dell XPS has this pretty cool, I want to say where your palms get rested and stuff like that. And it has a touch screen as well. And of course you have your touchpad and your keys and everything like that. I don't care if I have not eaten at all or eaten burgers and fries. It looks the same. It has all the fingerprints on it. It's like, is my hands that oily? It's just this particular material looks that way. And yeah, you can wipe those off. You can use your air spray to spray out the keys to make sure nothing, especially on your big keyboards and stuff, because you get stuff underneath that. I would say you can use a damp cloth. Now, wring it out the best you can if you want to wipe across your screen. Do not spray anything on your screen and wipe it off because that actually could get in the cracks and corners. Yeah. I'm a little bit leery even of the stuff that use this for your cleaner and they have you spray it on there. I don't know. Would the solvent evaporate before that? I do not know. So I usually say, hey, use a damp rag, wring it out the best you can, wipe it on, and then you can use a dry one to wipe that off, especially if you're using a touch screen because it does get kind of messy.
I use rubbing alcohol, just the same.
Not hot water.
Not hot water. I'll use the 90% alcohol, put it on the cloth. I'll wipe it off.
I think it's 70%, isn't it? The rubbing alcohol 70%?
Okay, well, I'm using like the medical grade 90%.
Right. You might be working for a hospital right now, so.
No, I could get maybe more, but I don't need to. You can still buy 90% at Walmart. The higher the percentage, the quicker it's going to evaporate off.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, not every solvent you could do that with. Some solvents will actually, take the letters off your keys,
And then some.
Don't use acetone.
No. So, I mean, it's just alcohol just to help clean it, and it evaporates and make sure that it's nice and there.
And that's going to be on the keys, right? You're not...
I'm using it on the monitor, too.
Okay. Like isolated places and stuff like that?
No, usually the whole thing.
All right. I just worry about, alcohol can break down certain glues and stuff as well. So,
well, I mean, okay, so I'm using it on the screen. I am not going into the cracks here and really scrubbing, if you will. Yeah, no, you can be careful where you're using it.
I also put down here the blow out your hardware.
Fans.
So, you have the little air cans that you can spray with, and I think that's really actually a good idea when you've got a laptop.
Right.
You can spray it through the little vents on the back and clean out those fans, stuff like that. I'm not saying go and take your desktop, open up the case, and spray it out every month. I probably do that more like every 6 months. Like, especially, if I'm in there to change out a hard drive, in there to change out a memory, in there to change out a graphics card, I'll go ahead and clean it up at that time as well. And, the things you do yourself, but you don't know if you want to suggest it or not. Mm-hmm. I have been known to undo both sides of that case, put it out there on the back table, and get the leaf blower and blow it through, because we do get a lot of dust in this West Texas area. Now,
I have not asked my father-in-law for his air compressor to do the same thing.
So, your father-in-law.
He has an air compressor. I mean,
yeah, now, that is... It's a little strong, so make sure all your stuff is in there tight. You have your screws on them, that type of stuff. I'm not saying I'm using real strong pressure, but it does. I mean, you can make those fans whistle and stuff. But man, it's incredible how much dust gets stored in these things. So that will make them run hotter. And once they start running hotter, you actually can start making it where they're going to deteriorate
faster.
And working, yeah.
And another thing. A lot of your newer CPUs, I don't know which generation I could say, it's been here for a while, they do thermal throttling to prevent it from overheating to a point of being dangerous.
But that gets
itself.
Annoying after a while.
Yeah, thermal throttling means it's slowing down purposefully to not go near as fast to heat up or to keep itself cooler longer. I have this problem with my work laptop. It is an all aluminum surface. It's got a vent maybe this big to try to thing.
And I think the aluminum stuff, they're trying to make that as part of the heat sink too.
Correct. That's part of it.
Yeah.
But I had it on a wood desk. So of course it's going to retain some heat.
Yeah.
It's I used to have its docking station on top of it.
Right.
And I had a whole bunch of mess of cords, so the airflow back there wasn't very good. One day I'm sitting there in a Teams meeting for maybe, I want to say 10 minutes, and it starts bugging out on me. And I end up getting out of the Teams meeting. It was still bugging out.
Right.
So I was like, all right, I know it's not Teams related. And I go to restart my computer, and I unplugged it, and I could feel the heat emanating off of it just straight. I was like, okay, this needs to sit out for a bit.
Oh, gosh.
So I text my supervisor. I was like, I'll be on as soon as possible, but this thing needs to cool down just a hair before I get back in there, or it's going to be...
Right.
I'm going to be slow the rest of the day.
And I mean...
So blowing it out is good. I kind of had that
happen the other day, too. Is, I had it in my trunk and forgot that I had it in the trunk.
Oh, yeah, I've been there.
And West Texas, you don't want to do that. They get. They can handle the heat, I'm sure, but constantly doing that is probably going to be bad for them, especially any glues or anything like that that's painting stuff together in them.
So story about blowing out. I used to have that Acer Aspire 755 1G back in college. This Acer Aspire started getting really hot very quick.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, what have I not done to this in a while to help make it do it? Blow it out. I go and get the can of air. I try to blow it out. Still running hot. I had to open it up to find out that I had a dust bunny big enough to prevent the airflow from going through.
Oh, yeah.
That even with the can of air, it wasn't going to go anywhere.
I've kind of gotten into this habit of buying used laptops.
Mm-hmm.
When I need a laptop. And yeah, that's the first thing you do is you open it up and you see
this big dust bunny.
Dog hair. It could have been cat hair. I mean, they do that too. We also had gosh, what was it? You go in there and you're going, this is more advanced, but yeah, usually you're going to redo the thermal paste that's on your CPU and your heat sink to your fans, and so you're going to clean that up too. It is, you can get better as you go along, but simply just blowing out the dust, that's going to help.
That's one of the best ways to keep things. So we already said removing unused apps. We already said keeping software up to date. We talked about cleaning your browser.
Yeah.
We talked about backing up your files. Running a privacy check.
Now, see, running the privacy check, I thought, how do you do that exactly? But really what we're talking about there is, you have different apps that use location.
Correct.
Or the microphone, or the camera, either, your desktop with an external or your laptop with an internal. And those, you need to every once in a while review that privacy thing, because I don't know, sometimes when you do updates, it seems like that stuff has changed. And I thought that was kind of weird,
So Google, and not just Google, there's other big name companies that will do the same thing. They update their privacy agreement fairly frequently.
Sometimes every day.
You need to read that information, because what you are allowing Google or other companies to take may be more than you're willing to bargain with. Now, unfortunately, that usually means that if you do not want that,
you will not be able to use it.
You won't be able to use it.
Yeah.
However, there are some alternatives out there that might meet your standards always. Yeah. So just looking into that.
Now, Jamie said to put this on there. I have not done this in a while. Now, of course, I say that now that I'm thinking about it, I do have this. So anyway, defrag your hard drive. Or nowadays, since these
Windows 7 and up,
that it's optimization or optimizing your hard drive.
Right.
Now, this is not for your solid state drives.
No, do not do this for your solid state drive. Do not do this for your NVMe. Do not do this for your flash drive.
Correct. Those are all your SSD solid state drives.
Right. What this is the way that our files are kind of stored on your hard drive. And we're talking about the actual optical drive. Okay. As it's writing, it'll write in a sequential manner. So it'll allow it to read faster. Okay. When you delete, it doesn't actually remove those things. What happens is that the new files that are going to be written are going to be wrote in those empty spaces.
Yeah. So like a space here, space here, space here, whatever's open.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which in this case we'll call fragmentation or fragmenting.
Right.
So in order to read that file, now it has to go into several different locations. Your hard drives are fast enough that you're probably not going to notice a huge difference in that in most cases.
Yeah, 5600, 7200.
Yeah.
Sometimes 10,000.
Right.
Go Raptor.
So you may not notice it, but it does make a difference to go ahead and do what we call the defragging or optimizing. And what that'll do is it'll move all the files around to make sure that they are in a sequential manner at all times, or at least after that. I'm not saying you need to do this all the time, and usually if you're not a big file store, file deleter, install a lot of programs, uninstall a lot of programs frequently, this isn't usually a big issue for you, okay? If you can actually have Windows, if you have Windows, you can have it run and say, oh, this is about 8% hard, fragmented. If you're at 8, you're probably not going to worry about it. If you're getting 20, 50, 70, go ahead and run it. It's going to take a while, but you'll notice a huge difference, especially when you're in the bigger percentage of fragmentation in it, and you might actually notice that you have more space as well.
And if you're a power user like me, you may find out sometimes you're pushing how much hard drive you have left, and that actually can cause a problem, even in the solid state drive. So if you're getting down there where you have just a 1% left or something like that, it's moving files back and forth. It's using that space to move things around. That's actually going to slow down the speed that you can load things and, so again, going back to deleting files you don't need, deleting apps you don't need anymore, and get rid of those. Take some of your pictures, your big movies that you made, all your podcasts that you've done, put them on external storage, get them off that hard drive to free up some space for you to use. So, with that said, I do have a couple of those RPM drives there. I have the 10,000 Rapture.
Yep.
Or Raptor. And
suddenly.
Come on, Rapture, now. Everybody jump. All right, sorry. Raptor, a 10,000 RPM Raptor, and that's usually for the media stuff that I use that for.
Right.
And then I have a 4 terabyte one that I'm using to store just big stuff. So
I have a 1 terabyte, a 4 terabyte, and I also have a Raptor, but I do not actually have that installed in my computer at this time.
Yeah, it's a 1 terabyte one, so that helps. On my server, I have some solid state drives that I'm using, and then they back up onto
the hard drive.
Yeah, I think it's a 4 terabyte.
And we'll talk about why that's a good important thing later.
Yeah,
and we've mentioned it once before, so if you didn't catch that in one of our previous podcasts, go back and listen to it. I think it was in the first 2, but we'll talk about that again when we're talking about backing up and why.
Now, the other thing I put on here is empty the trash. So you got a trash thing on your
No, it's not going to stink up your computer, but...
Yeah, but it's still doing storage.
Yeah.
So, but I was thinking, I think what you should do, unless this is the first time you're doing it, because you're going to load up that trash and I probably had to dump it a couple times. But when you get into a little system of doing this every month, then I think you should start with emptying the trash.
Right. That way you have a chance to unrecover.
So if you have any of those apps you're getting rid of, any of those files you're getting rid of that you thought you're not going to use anymore, and then somewhere in the middle of that month you thought, I deleted it, well, usually your trash still has it.
Right.
So when you get to the end of that next month, then you delete it. So you've had an extra 30 days that you know you didn't use it at all. So you know you can delete that. And then you'll fill it back in again this time when we start cleaning it up. So that's what I'm getting at there. So, don't finish with emptying the trash. Start with emptying the trash. But again, the first time you do it, you may have files on there that fills up that trash and you have to delete it anyway.
Yep. All right. So let's get on to our actual Linux review here. And this time we are reviewing Voyager OS. It is at present, literally right before, or right shortly after we were installing this, they actually went and updated from the 23.04 version of 23.10 version of Ubuntu.
Right, so it's a fork of Ubuntu.
Right.
Which is a fork of a Debian.
Right. To the 24.04, which is the long-term service release, or the LTS, of it in the final version. It is a 2-in-1 version with, for the very first time, the GNOME and XFCE desktops.
Correct. So what you do there is that when you go to log in, as soon as you click on your name or whatever your username is to log in, it'll make a little gear, and that little gear would be usually on the bottom right-hand side.
Right.
And you could click Ubuntu is what it says, I think, on mine. Xorg or X11,
Right.
Which so the Ubuntu is going to be your Wayland, your Xorg is going to be your X11 or Zorg.
Window
managing system.
Windows managing system. Yes, right. That'll work.
Okay, and then the next one's going to be the XEFE. That's it. No,
XFCE.
Right, XFCE. So you can pick between those two desktops roughly right there. And here's the deal. You can load a Linux onto your computer, an operating system, and you can load other desktops. There might be some files that conflict with each other.
Very true.
Now, if someone puts out a distro that has those together already, they've already removed most of those bugs already. So they got it working that way. So you could probably bounce between the two easily. Now, with that said, if you had stuff on your desktop before that we were talking about earlier, or if you had stuff in your dock or here or there, those are going to be moved around. You may not have all those favorite apps you had before in the one desktop loaded onto the other one.
This is true. Yes.
But it is cool if they have both those to work bounce back and forth with.
Yeah, and sometimes this might actually be very useful if you're using it as a live flash drive. Maybe not a live flash drive, but you installed it on a USB and you take it between 2 or 3 different computers. GNOME is fantastic with touchscreen computers.
Yeah.
It's really built for that. Your KDE is going to be better fit for your power user desktops. I mean, anybody can use it, but still, it's going to be more kind of desktop based, something that's not touchscreen.
There's going to be some that, like your Cinnamon or Mate or Mate or whatever, that's going to be closer to a Windows looking like.
Correct.
You know, you'll see some similarities as far as where to find stuff.
Yep. And then XFCE might be better for, say you happen to load it on a friend's 20-year-old laptop.
Right. So it is a simpler, less resources being used type. Yeah.
So it's good to keep in mind that those exist, and you still have all your necessary installed files and programs. It's just slightly different way of accessing them between the two.
So what SourceForge tells us about it is Voyager 24.04 LTS is a 2-in-1 version for the first time with GNOME and XFCE desktops unified in a single Voyager distribution to be selected during your session. All in an old-school adventure style completely redesigned for this duel. The GNOME desktop coupled with an XFCE desktop with the promise finally kept of having two unified GNOME and XFCE systems. Light, fast, modern, fluid, secure, and efficient in a hybrid PC and tablet environment. The two desktops are very distinct and their respective applications are mostly invisible for one or the other environment. This release is based on the final Linux kernel and the latest version of Ubuntu, either in 9-month non-LTS updates or a 5-year LTS long-term support updates. Other Voyager distributions are available, like Voyager 12, which is based on Debian 12 Bookworm, and the older Voyagers to see you can see them all on that Voyager website. Yeah. So, with all that said, I'll tell you a little bit about loading it up on my machines, and I actually had time to do multiple stuff. So I loaded it on my desktop. I loaded it on my laptop, my Dell XS or my Dell XPS, and I was using that mostly there. I actually wrote over where I had a BROS, so that actually ended up being a dual boot on one of my drives. Okay, so but I decided, hey, one day I have time. I'm going to play with the gaming download, right? Mm-hmm. But while I was searching for the gaming part, I noticed it had the 2-in-1 desktop, and not 2-in-1 desktop like doing GNOME and XFCE. This is actually a 2-in-1 like a Yoga, like you could take your computer and bend it over and use it as a tablet. I have two of those. One's at work. So I was having a little bit of trouble with that Debian. Not a lot, and I think it might have been something to do with the X11 compared to your Wayland. Possibly. I'm not sure, but when I was doing that first part of the project with the children. So by the next time I got in there and did my second set of recordings with the children, I actually had Voyager on there, and I was using that. And this was on a 2-in-1 Dell, probably a 6-year-old, 2018 roughly, Inspiron 7591. It has a Core i5 and it's 10th gen, but it did great. I mean, I have it on dual boot as well, but as far as not having to add anything extra, the only thing I had to do was click on auto turn.
Yep.
Auto turn. That's what I had to do. My little pencil works great on it. Turning it works great on it. The keyboard comes up automatically when I have it in tablet and press on the browser, I'm trying to load up, where I'm going. So that all worked great. So that was bonus that worked. I pulled out my old Lenovo ThinkPad S1 2-in-1 Yoga. It is 10 years old. And
it still ran.
Blew the dust off it, and I have it right here. I've actually been using it to type notes with. It's been awesome. It gave it new life. It's working perfectly. So it really is good. It has GNOME 46 on it. It has Ubuntu 24.04 LTS, what's built on. Now, usually when you load up GNOME to start with, you always have to do all those stuff like I'm going to get the GNOME, I don't know if you call it Essentials. extensions, I think is what's called. You got the GNOME extensions. Dash to dock and stuff like that. And I remember every time I loaded Ubuntu GNOME, which is, the main desktop for just regular Ubuntu. Not Kubuntu or Xubuntu or any of that stuff.
Right.
Just Ubuntu. I remember I had to load up all these different extensions. This thing comes with the extensions and the extension manager automatically. It's already set up there to start with. It has an Ubuntu dock on it. It has an open apps that you can do from the dock, your show apps button. It also has one in the upper left-hand corner, which I think they call that an overview.
Yes.
And it drops back and you have the files. It has the apps on the dock. These apps were like Firefox, Files, Text Editor, which in the 23.10 was actually French, like a tutor day something like that.
I think he installed the wrong version because when I installed it, but I take that back.
Yeah.
I installed the beta of the 24.10.
There you go.
And so I didn't see what he saw, which was mine was all English. I don't know what he's talking about.
It was just like two apps had the French title on it, and one of them was Text Editor. Okay, you have Notes, you have Private, which is actually a private version of Firefox. You have Calendar on there. You have Show Desktop on it. You have the software icon on it, and FreeTube, which before I think was SMTube, but when you updated it, which is a YouTube browser or viewer, if you will.
Right.
You have Box Voyager, or Box Voyager GNOME, and you have Trash all on that bar. Now the Box Voyager GNOME is kind of cool because that's where it has like little shortcuts to things like themes that you can use. It has the shortcuts to the gaming things like Wine and other stuff like that. So you can do
cleaning up some of your stuff.
It does. It has a place where you clean it up. It even has what I want to say in its apps. It has Bleach. BleachBit, yeah. So that you can use that to help clean up the extra stuff you don't need.
Be careful with BleachBit. As with anything, be careful with what you're deleting and make sure you are sure that you want to delete
I think the idea there is, of course, you hear about people using Bleach to get rid of their files on their hard drives and stuff like that. I mean, so that's kind of there. You go off that
somebody tells you to remove your root folder, do not do that.
That'll mess it up. In the upper right-hand corner, it has the encrypted folder set up if you want to do that. It has a mail shortcut. It has your clipboard. It has date and time. In the drop-down area, you have the percent power, screen capture, settings gear, lock the session. It has a power off button. You can suspend, restart, power off, log out. You have volume control and brightness control up there, the Wi-Fi setup, your Bluetooth setup, your power mode. You can change it between power saving and balanced and performance. It has a button to toggle between dark and light styles. It has a keyboard illumination. You can actually change your keyboard illumination.
That's nice.
Up there. Yeah, that I love that. That's great. It has caffeine up there. I like caffeine. Caffeine, you can click on it to not turn off your computer at all.
Right.
If you're working on it, you go to the bathroom, go get a coffee or something like that. You come back, everything, you have to re-log in. You can keep that from happening. Or if there's a chance you might leave and not come back, you can set it 30 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever. But caffeine's a pretty cool thing. It has your settings center, which has your GNOME edits and GNOME tweaks and desktop configuration editor, extension preferences, NVIDIA settings, passwords, passkeys, pulse audio settings, all that's up there. So it has everything up there to work with. Conky. It has Conky on the desktop, which gives you all the settings, how fast it's running, all that stuff right there on your desktop. I never have liked Conky until this actual distro. I remember it's one of those things I used to load, and all of a sudden I actually had Conky on there, and I was like, man, this is just terrible. I mean, it messes up my backdrop. This one actually blends into the backdrop. It looks great. We talked about BleachBit, it does have these other apps like your extension manager and extensions, and I talked about that. Your keep passwords, it's like a password saver.
Yep.
I will say you can store your passwords on programs like that or like Bitwarden. Remember, when you're copying and paste the stuff, delete your clipboard.
Yes.
Because your password will be on that clipboard and your username may be on that too. So be sure to remember to do that. You have your firewall there. You can set up a firewall there. You can
always set up a firewall.
Yeah, you have your Thunderbird email. You have your LibreOffice stuff. You have a document scanner. It has a document scanner. I use the document scanner I mean, without doing anything else, with my Epson scanner here to load up things for mom, email them to her. And I didn't set up anything. It did it automatically, worked just perfectly with so great. It has Rhythm Box on it. It has music. Music's pretty cool. If you put anything in your music file or folder, it will go ahead and load that up, and if it has all the, what would we call the metadata and stuff like that on there, you'll have the album from,
nice.
1980 Duran Duran, something like that. Camera, Shotwell, GIMP, printers, transmission, which is a BitTorrent type thing. You have your software updates, your software itself. You have a Synaptic package manager as well, so that's another package manager. You have boot repair on there.
That's nice.
Now, you can use the boot repair. It's probably going to only be on the live version, but it does have it. It has a startup disk creator. Now, that's kind of interesting there. I was telling you at one time or another, it seemed like with my Ubuntu stuff, I didn't have to go and use things like Ventoy or Balena Etcher. For some reason, it seemed like if I just copied the ISO over to the USB drive there, it would actually make it into a startup disk creator. It does, because it has that automatically in it. You have all kinds of games, their version of Pokemon, their version of Pac-Man, and all kinds of other stuff, Sudoku, Mines, chess, other things like that. So that's kind of fun. There's other stuff it had on it that I thought was pretty cool, but the problems I had with it aren't really much. This I could probably take care of, but because the app launcher had like the white icons, and then you kind of have a translucent type dock. If you had a white background on any browser or anything like that, it looks like it disappeared. It did disappear. It was there. It took me a while to catch that.
Oh man. That's minor.
Very minor. All these are minor. GNOME. Getting used to GNOME again. That's me. That's on me. I just forgot all the shortcuts and stuff like that. The last thing is at first I did not like the yellow pointer.
Oh yeah.
That little teardrop pointer and the cursor. But later on I actually started liking that. It grew on me.
I do not mind the colored. I actually, on my Windows computer for work, I have a purple pointer. And the reason, it's a funny story, being a trainer, and when we were starting doing things remotely, I had to, use sharing my screen and going through the PowerPoint. And I don't know if you know this, but some of your laptops have very high DPI settings,
right?
Or a great pixel depth, or high resolution. Either way it goes, some people were starting to complain they couldn't see my pointer. Like, I was pointing at this where I can't see it.
Yes.
So what I ended up doing is like, you know what? I can get used to a big pointer. Right. I enlarged that thing as big as I could go, and then made it purple, of all things, just so it was different.
Right.
And everybody was like, hey, I can see it now. And it just grew. I actually just okay, I have not changed it since. I haven't gone back and changed it down or anything.
So my Dell XPS, it has a little bit different resolution on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you always have to change that to a scale.
Oh,
200%.
Yeah.
Especially, when you first loading some type of Linux. Yeah, I mean, it's itty bitty. But for some reason on some of the stuff, and I don't know if it was on the Voyager or not, it's like my little pointer out here is where I want it to be size-wise. It's big or something like that,
Right.
But when I went into the window itself, it's like back to the small.
Yeah.
It gets down here, it's big again. Have you ever had stuff like that happen?
I haven't seen that, but I haven't personally experienced that, but I know what you're talking about. But yeah, no, for me, I didn't really have any issues with
honestly,
it at all.
Mine are just picky, and it's mostly me. Yeah. It wouldn't matter if I loaded up GNOME off of opensource, or if I loaded up GNOME on Ubuntu or this GNOME here. I still have to learn GNOME again. And I used to use GNOME at one time.
Hey, you used to be a big fan of GNOME until he encountered KRunner, and then it was all
KRunner changed the whole thing. I'm still trying to do KRunner. So here's my KRunner on this particular thing. You hit your super key, which is your
Windows
key or whatever, and then you could type it in. So it's actually going to open up your your launcher up in the left hand corner, or whatever you want to call it, and you can type it in, and they'll give you. So that's one extra step.
Yeah.
Whereas the K-Runner, you just
type.
You're on your desktop. You just go ahead and type it in.
Yeah. But yeah, no. My overall rating of this was very simple. The easiest installation was awesome.
No problem with installation. And most Ubuntu forks you're going to have no problem.
No problem. And then the features. This wasn't surprising. Especially when my dad told me about his yoga pad, it was even more surprising.
Yeah.
And this was base out of the box, and all he said he had to do was check one thing.
Yeah.
One thing. He didn't have to install nothing.
The stylus already there. Everything already worked.
So 10 out of 10, or if I could go up, we're going to go ahead and say 10.5, just for the sake of the yoga pad.
Right.
Go above. That's at 105. That's awesome. Performance-wise, I have seen no issues.
It has a ton of features on it, and it's still running pretty fast.
Yeah, even for as much as you have. I've seen some systems, I don't want to say Garuda. Garuda was kind of heavy, but there were some other systems I've seen that are chock full of all these features and apps, and then they just are clunky as can be.
Yeah.
So this was great. Ease of use. Debian is easy to use.
Easy to use.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
And documentation and support, if you can reach French, 100%.
Right. So, you can change the language on that. The only problem I run into on that, and that's probably why I wouldn't give it as high a rating, is to do with, and understand, this is a French operating system. It's a French group that's putting it together. All right. So I thought it was pretty cool that they had a beginners tab on their website, which took you to, they're using a lot of videos that people have made.
Right.
Like you can find on YouTube. And that's okay too. I'm okay with that. If they're signing off on it, then apparently that person's know what they're doing. But yes, you can change your words to English. They're printed. But the guys that are talking on your
talking on
YouTube are talking in French. So, anyway, so if you're a French person, it worked out great.
It's great. This is fantastic. Either way it goes.
It's a great, I like the 2-in-1. I like the easy install. I like the fact that it had both Snap and Flatpak, and as well as Ubuntu and Debian as far as in the GNOME store. I love the caffeine. I like all the fact that it has all these flavors, that you have Ubuntu or Ubuntu or the gaming Ubuntu, or you can go all the way back to Debian and get that, that was like 15 years or 5 years. I guess 5 years, of LTS type stuff. So you can go back and do that. I did like Conky. I really did like the way it sets everything up on the upper right hand corner. It seems to be really easy to get to things. I mean, I would give everything a 10 except for the actual website. But honestly, I did not really need the website outside of getting it downloaded. I mean, it worked out great, except for the fact that I found out, hey, it's doing the 2-in-1 computers too. So let's do that,
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, no, I call this simple, stable, easy.
Yeah, simple, stable. You could do this as a beginner.
Absolutely.
And granted, it's in French, but like I said, your browsers usually are going to change that language. But you download and you can set it up, especially if you have any familiarity with installing Linux. You're not going to have a problem at all.
No.
But if it's your first time, you're going to have a little bit of problem, but you probably would have that same problem with any of the ones you're going to use because it's one of the easiest ones that we have used.
Yeah. So do we have a verse of the week?
The verse of the week is Luke 6:38, and it says, "Give, and it will be given to you, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." And what it's getting at here is not only, the Lord's going to give things to you. And I don't mean this is not prosperity or anything like that. He's going to take care of you if you trust in Him.
What, yeah.
And He's going to take care of you above and beyond what you thought would be going. So, so much that you're going to be running over, and that joy that you have that's running over is going to be infectious to other people around you. So, the deal is he's going to make sure you're taken care of so much more than what you ever thought you would be. And that actually is going to glorify Him, because that measure that you're going to have is going to be pouring over into the people around you. So
Yeah.
allow that joy to be poured out to people around you. So whether you're working in Linux or other places, just allow people to see the joy you have and why you have that joy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So in closing, love your God, love your neighbor, keep your mind sharp, and also your computer with Linux and open source.
All right, guys. We appreciate it. Thank you for hanging around. Hopefully the audio is much better this time.
Hopefully
Let us
so.
know. You can do that in the notes or comments, or go out to our Discord. Those will all be in the links in the comments below. But please let us know if this is a little bit better. Are you okay? Is there anything you want us to add or take away from this? Is there any questions you have? Is there Linux that you want us to try? Again, we may be trying our wheel, but we may do something else because we had 2 Ubuntus in a row, which is real easy to do because over 50% of them in the distro watch is Ubuntu. But thank you guys. Take care. God bless.